26. I grew up in Baraboo, Wisconsin. At a very young age, my mother and father separated. When I was 4.5 is when they separated and then divorced. I guess from that point, my mother, my brother Derek, and I lived in poverty. I think from that point until my mother met and then married my stepfather. My father wasn't around very much growing up, not until I got myself in trouble when I was about 15 years of age. I did a lot of fighting while I was growing up as a result of racism. I'm a little darker than a lot of the other people in this small community. It is primarily white. Poverty was another thing, being poor. I had a certain self-image or a certain idea about myself as a result of that. And I did a lot of fighting where I actually moved out of the house at a very young age. I moved in with a bunch of other kids who probably have backgrounds that were not unlike my own, challenging, chaotic, maybe abusive, or homes of neglect. And so I moved in with a bunch of other juvenile delinquents. And so at the age of 15, I was first initially arrested. I was taken out of the home. I was charged with, I want to say, 18, maybe 17, 18 different charges. And I was adjudicated delinquent. I was officially a juvenile delinquent. Something about being a bad boy was appealing to me. The abuse that I experienced as a child was physical abuse, emotional abuse. At this very young age, I developed this criminal persona. I wanted to be perceived as tough. I wanted to be perceived as somebody not to mess with. I relied extensively on crime to live. I had kind of rejected society once I was a felon. Finally, at the age of 27, I was arrested by the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, kind of a task force with the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Narcotics Enforcement. And I was charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine. Ultimately, I ended up pleading guilty after receiving the discovery against me. I was given 224 months, so 18 years, 8 months in federal prison. I arrived at the federal prison at Oxford actually the day before 9/11 happened, and I woke up in my first full day in federal prison was 9/11. And I was struck by the fact that as my life was changing, so was the entire world. I went into federal prison on September 10th, 2001. My first full day in federal prison was 9/11. On 9/11, I woke up. They cracked open our doors because the doors were closed. And here I am in federal prison. I'm trying to figure out what the next 18 and a half years of my life are going to be like. I continued as time went on to learn from other guys who had been in prison for a long time, learning the differences of prison culture and the customs, the norms, the do's, the don'ts. In prison, you have gangs, obviously street gangs that are incarcerated in large numbers. As a counterbalance to gang power, you have this loose conglomeration or affiliation of guys that would come together, and they're called a car. The way that it would traditionally be understood, cars is this loose affiliation of people, usually grouped by state. If you're unaffiliated, this provides a level of protection against gangs victimizing you. It is difficult to get to a place where you can be authentic in that kind of an environment without opening yourself up to being victimized. Ultimately, I had to do that. I had to find a handful of guys that I trusted, and through years, I got to know who those people were. And I could be authentically myself. I could talk about my dreams when I got out of prison. I could talk about the pain.
Take as much time as you need to.
Of not being with my kids. And they would share those things too. You have this idea that when you're down, when you're in prison for a certain amount of time, that you can experience all your losses within a short period of time, in a certain period of time. And the truth is that for whatever length of time you're in prison, you continue to lose. It doesn't end. just takes different forms. When I went into prison, I had 4 young children, and I had 1 child on the way, who was born shortly after I got to Oxford. During my term of incarceration, communication with my kids was difficult. I didn't have a lot of money, but I remember it was like $3.45 or something to place a phone call. I think I was making 12 cents an hour. So when I got paid, I didn't have much. If I could get them on the phone, I would talk to them for 15 minutes, and then that would be it. I was in federal prison for 14 years. Visitation was always pretty tough. You would enjoy your time, obviously, together. It was never very much, but it was crowded and it was loud. Emotionally, it was very tiring. And then at the end, especially when my children were young, they would say, well, can I just stay with you? And I would have to explain, no, you can't. Then they'd ask, well, can you come? Not yet. I just have to tell them not yet. I would say the biggest adjustment that I had to make when I was looking at the amount of time that I had before me to do was how was I going to structure my day and fill it up in a meaningful way. I focused on fitness. I took advantage of all the educational opportunities that they happen to have inside the prison itself. I did end up going to school. I took advantage of treatment opportunities to address, say, my anger. A lot of cognitive behavioral type modalities is what I got involved. About 5 years into my sentence, I got into an altercation with a bank robber and was thrown in solitary confinement. Now I was in the hole, and I had to write everybody at home, and I had to tell them that I was in the hole and why I was there. Their response was less than supportive. It was like, really, Ryan? Like, you're doing 18 and a half years in federal prison. You've been fighting your entire life. Now you're in jail, in prison. Like, when's it going to be enough? When have you had enough? The disappointment from my family really forced me to do an inventory of myself, to look back at my life, to ask myself that fundamental question, like, when did I stop being a good person? I just decided I was going to reject whatever the environment was going to try to offer me. When I went back and I revisited all these different formative things that I had experienced, whether it's poverty or racism or abuse or all the things that led to the creation of that persona, I realized I've been wearing this mask and causing myself and everybody in my life an awful lot of harm to keep up appearances. I have no idea what my potential is. I haven't done anything. I have no idea what I'm capable of. And so that's when I made a decision that I was going to get out. I was going to go to college. Go to college is what I did. I went to school, and it was there that, I got A's. And it was there that I met my mentor, my academic mentor, Dr. Annetta Coleman. I just decided I'm going to reject the environment. I'm going to focus on my education. I'm going to associate with like-minded men. And that's what I did. When I first went to prison, I was writing letters all the time. I was on the phone all the time. I was getting visits on top of visits. After about a year of this, a guy comes to me and he says, look, what are you doing, kid? You have 18 and a half years. You're not getting out. You need to figure out how to live in this environment. You can't live on both sides of that fence. What I did, and I wish I hadn't, I followed that advice. I really had internalized this idea that I had to live on the inside. I had to let the outside go. I lost an awful lot of my connection to the outside world when I embraced this advice that I need to let it go. And I wish I hadn't done it. And I'm like, the only thing that means anything to me is outside that fence. Depression was something that would visit. It could be something tragic like the loss of a family member. It could be a visit that was really good. And then you come out of your visit and you have to go in and you have to get strip searched. You go back to the compound and you're on your way back to your unit, and you can hear the cacophony of noises, it would crash on you sometimes, the idea that I have this many years yet of my life that I have to be in this environment. In prison, my constant companions, for sure, were books. I like studying religion. I like studying philosophy. When I started thinking about who I wanted to be when I got out, a lot of the literature that I read was convict criminology related literature. Funny now, because I work for Human Services here in Sauk County. I work as a peer support specialist, helping people that are struggling with opioids and opiates. And I do actually have a corner office. But there's so many different things in my life that have manifested that way based on what I put on that board. I went from a correctional institution to an educational institution. And that was huge. I was proposed as a member of Sauk County's Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. You have the judges of Sauk County, the prosecutor, the public defender, and all these community stakeholders. The one voice that was not at that table was the ex-convict voice. Being there helped connect me more to the community. My success is largely attributable to, I'm going to say first and foremost, my fiance. The support, she and I connected when I first came home. We've been together this entire time. Her support is what has helped me to achieve these other things. The community's support, my family's support. But there had to be space by the community to allow me to become this other person. And if that hadn't been there, then I wouldn't be successful in my reentry. What does my life look like now? It's been an incredible 4 years. I don't even know what happened to 4 years. I've been in this relationship with this incredible woman that I've known since I was 14. I've been in a relationship with her this entire time. I have reestablished myself in the community in such a way that I'm not embarrassed anymore to own or to talk about the fact that I was incarcerated. I'm not embarrassed to talk about who I used to be. Now I'm involved in service work with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for Sauk County. I was able to join a network of people, a handful of people actually, maybe 7, and help to create this nonprofit, formerly Incarcerated College Graduates Network. So it's made up entirely, the founders of formerly Incarcerated College Graduates Network are all ex-convicts. We have members in 43 states, over 1,000 members. The reason I wanted to be involved in the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee in particular is because I was a juvenile delinquent. Me being able to share my story with them, we find points of commonality. I would like to see kind of a peer support, right? Peer support being somebody with that same lived experience, working with these kids and being able to say, look, I get it. I don't get your situation necessarily perfectly, but here's some challenges that I experienced. Are any of those the same? Can we talk about that? Okay, so let me share the other part of my story. When you are introducing yourself to a kid who has been through abuse, has been through neglect, has suffered trauma, and you can look at that kid and you can say, I get it. And you can share your own story. You can connect with them in a way that I think nobody else can. I've contemplated what it is that I would tell a younger version of myself. And I would say, go to school, ask for help, apply yourself towards your education, believe that you're worth more than whatever it is you've gone through. My name is Ramnarace, and this is my brief but spectacular take on my reentry.